Forever bound to the darkness of this forest. Many call me a necromancer. And they should, for I feed on the souls of men.
We are talking about the period horror movie, The Necromancer. Or if I were to have titled this movie, it would have been called Killer Flashbacks. This one is directed by Stuart Brennan, who also wrote the movie, and is set in the Napoleonic War, where we have a group of British soldiers who feel that they are kind of their lives are being thrown away. They're essentially on a suicide mission. So they decide to essentially abandon the war and try to kind of travel home to the UK. And by doing so, they kind of want to have to go through Germany to try and avoid detection as kind of like people who have essentially gone AWOL. So this kind of small group of soldiers head towards kind of Germany, where they encounter seemingly another kind of British soldier who appears to be hurt somehow and is kind of babbling about strange things that involve the Black Forest, which they have to go through. But nonetheless, they go through this forest and they soon start to experience strange phenomena. Each of the soldiers seem to be experiencing some type of internal kind of terror which is kind of unique to them in regards to the sins of their own past, and this kind of forest seems to have a power to be able to bring out obviously the sins of each of these kind of soldiers and maybe make a threat in a more corporeal way in the kind of what is the modern times in this movie. So what happens? You'll have to watch the movie to find out. I've seen a movie a little while ago called The Ritual, which was a great kind of a British movie where we have a group of hitchhikers going through a forest and encountering kind of like what called folk horror. And this is similar to in a lot of ways, but certainly not as effective as The Ritual, which is a truly fantastic movie. But this one does have the point of difference of being a kind of period piece, whereas The Ritual is a contemporary movie. So first of all, what works for me? Now, one thing I feel absolutely stands out is the cinematography here. The cinematography here is truly artistic. There is some absolutely beautiful shots and kind of sequences. They've obviously had a good use of kind of like, I think, the drones to give some really kind of like great kind of panoramic shots of kind of the sea of trees with the kind of the mist. And even in our tightest shots, where we have these kind of the soldiers that are obviously dressed in their kind of red military uniforms, in contrast to the kind of obviously the kind of the trees and the kind of the misty backgrounds, really look stunning. It's like a painting come to life in some sequences with this movie. Really, truly a very kind of visually stunning movie. I think the attention to detail is very good in regards to the history side of it as well. Although it was kind of like all the kind of the uniforms, the weapons, all of that, it's very kind of accurate to the kind of the time periods, and I feel was obviously treated kind of with a certain amount of kind of respect. The movie does have some eerie moments, and I have to say the kind of the setup for this movie is quite strong. It's kind of like this mysterious kind of like the Black Forest, even the name, and that's obviously the title of the actual forest, the real name of it, if you're unawares. You know, lends itself to kind of like the fantastical, and they certainly kind of put the fear of God into these kind of soldiers, and it's a great kind of like setup for a movie. The movie also makes good use of audio effects here. I feel there is some sound design here which is put to good use to kind of make some kind of effective scenes where I feel audio is used to kind of like it's certainly in one sequence to be quite the kind of like the spooky side effect, so to speak. But maybe what doesn't work. Now, this movie is very slow paced. Now, that is not necessarily a bad thing. I enjoy plenty of slower paced movies, but I feel this movie just goes a little bit too slow. Now, there's a lot of setup with this movie, and I feel there's not a huge amount of plot, to be honest with you. So I feel there are scenes here that are expanded on a little bit too much to kind of like just drag out the running time to a feature-length kind of movie, and you feel the kind of the time, unfortunately. It becomes a little bit of a chore sometimes, and we don't really get to the kind of the meat of the plot until a good portion of the way through. Now, I appreciate obviously you have to have time for kind of character building, and I am a big fan of obviously having relatable characters, and the movie does do a good job, I feel, of fleshing out the kind of the characters so you kind of know them to an individual point. But I feel that it could have been done and still had a little bit more kind of going on screen here. The movie's obviously kind of a low budget and doesn't kind of have too much in the way of special effects. So those of you who are expecting more, a little bit of on-screen kind of like a movie magic, will maybe a little bit disappointed. It's more kind of implied than anything else. There are a couple of okay kind of like makeup effects, I suppose, but nothing too kind of nothing too that's going to kind of blow your socks off and wow you. The plot point here of having these kind of men experience the sins of their past, I don't know, to me it's a little bit of a tired trope, to be honest, and I feel in this case it was a way to get around budgetary restraints, to be honest. And the movie, because it's relying on sins of the past, man, this movie has a hell of a lot of flashbacks. It is just peppered with them. It's every kind of like few minutes there's a short flashback, a short flashback, a short flashback. It's just, I mean, they all relate to ultimately the fate of these kind of men, but I didn't think you needed it quite so much. They seem to repeat them as well, so you have the same flashback repeated multiple times in the movie, and it's like, it's not necessary. And again, I'll point to, I feel, just kind of making it so it's padding to a feature-length movie, so it can be packaged as and sold then as a film. And the acting here, I have to say, is what I refer to as theatre acting. So what I mean by that is when you go to the theatre, the performers on a theatre stage have to project ultimately to everyone in the auditorium, and therefore over enunciate, sometimes have to kind of like exaggerate a little bit, but on the screen it comes across as a little overacting, I must say. So I felt at least in some circumstances the acting here wasn't brilliant, and unfortunately this kind of deflates some of the kind of the characterization that you have, because the acting here is just not from everyone, to be honest, but there are some people here where the acting, I feel, is just a little bit kind of below par, shall we say. And because of the kind of, so going back to the kind of the pacing of this issue and really the lack of much plot, the movie does become a tad tedious at times. Now, like I said, this is visually it's a very interesting movie. I feel like maybe could have done with a little bit of a rewrite, and they could have done maybe a little bit more kind of, maybe a couple more kind of like twists in regards to plot, and maybe a little bit more kind of going on screen here. But this movie has I feel the basis of some talent behind it, certainly, and I feel it will have its fans who enjoy kind of like a period movie, and obviously during those kind of like those times when you're thinking of supernatural stuff, you can kind of think, oh man, people didn't know about science like we do today, and kind of things that kind of be jump to conclusions and kind of superstitions and stuff like that. So it adds that kind of extra element of when you put yourselves in the kind of like the shoes of these kind of characters, and adds that extra element to it. But although this movie I feel does offer some interesting kind of sequences and kind of scenes here, it's certainly not a scary movie. It doesn't quite have the kind of the appeal maybe that The Ritual has, which it is kind of closest movie I would compare this to, which has a similar setup, albeit in kind of a contemporary kind of times here. But it's not nearly as kind of as creepy or as kind of scary, this movie. And I think that's, like I said, down to maybe lack of things happening and unfortunately some poor acting. But anyway, people behind this movie I feel certainly one to look out for. I'll give it a 5 out of 10, and a lot of that I feel it's for its visual style, because it's a strikingly beautiful movie. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.